Yeah. Hi, I'm Paul Schaefer.
I'm Will Lee.
And you are watching the Letterman Podcast. I think we
Welcome once again to the Letterman Podcast. My name is Mike Chisholm. I have a saying with this show. This is why we do the show. I say that many times. Tonight's episode is actually literally within the bones of the skeleton of what was conceived when myself and the people who kind of were advising me or helping me thought about what this show was. I always had the idea. I've over my years, as an enthusiast of this thing that Letterman and company put out, I would run into from time to time folks who had an encounter with the show, civilians who would have an encounter with the show. There was one time I was on a cruise ship and I met somebody and Letterman came up somehow and he's like, "Oh yeah, this happened to me back on late night." And it was like 15 years later, and he was still talking about it like it happened yesterday. And I've had that happen a few times in my life. And those of us who love Dave and Company, you know, many of us agree with the idea that it was kind of like a secret club, and if ever people were unknowingly brought into that club, it was always a fun thing. This episode is exactly one of those things. Alita and Mike Ditkowsky are the guests today. Alita was unknowingly brought in as part of a bit that was used on Letterman years ago to do with George W. Bush. I don't want to say much more than that. We'll play the clip. We've got permission to play the clip, so thank you for that. And 20 years later, almost to the day, this lovely couple from New York, from Long Island, is still talking about this moment, and you'll see the joy that they have in talking about being part of this moment. Caught in the crosshairs between the Late Show making fun of George W. Bush, and this couple was a part of that, Alita specifically. So please enjoy this very fun episode of the Letterman Podcast with Alita and Mike Ditkowsky. All right, Alita, Mike, it is really nice to have you both here. We're going to get into this. I'll tell you this straight up. When I first started the Letterman Podcast, when I conceived it originally with some of the other people who were advising me, one of the things that I always wanted one of the things I wanted to focus on in the show is talking to people who had a run-in with the show accidentally. You know, they picked up the random phone call off the street, or they, somehow, some way, it's like almost the collateral damage of the show, and you certainly fit that bill. This is one of those episodes that I take a real delight in. You had an encounter with the show, not knowing it was going to happen. It just happened. And how many years later, 20 years later, whatever it is, we're still talking about it a lot. You're still smiling about it. How did it feel to have Alita suddenly thrust into the limelight of the Late Show with David Letterman?
Oh, it was great. I'll never let her live it down. I mean, we're having fun with this. I mean,
to this day.
Yeah, you can't not have fun. Sure.
Alita, the first time you saw yourself on Late Show with David Letterman in that bit, what did you think?
Well, first I was shocked to even find out that I was on it, because I was getting phone calls from friends and family saying, what was I doing on Letterman?
Yeah.
And I had absolutely no idea that they used that clip with me and the president on the show. So I was shocked, like all these people calling me, what was I doing on Letterman, and how funny I was on Letterman. And I'm like, I wasn't on Letterman. What are you talking about? And everybody was like, yes, you were.
Well, according to our nephew, because the first call came the next morning, our nephew Jared was in Carolina, and he was going on about how funny Alita was on Letterman. And we're like, what are you talking about? She goes, I wasn't on. And then after we heard from him, then we started hearing from our friends over the next day or two. So,
okay.
So we found out that it was true that Letterman had used that clip. I think, did you call, or did we know someone that knew someone that worked?
No, Richard and Denise had a friend who worked in production, and they got us the tape of the episode.
Okay.
The second episode.
Because
Okay.
again, this is a long time ago. This is when, recording technology, DVR, you couldn't just necessarily just bring it up right away. So you had this time where everyone's telling you were on Letterman, but you were kind of helpless to see it yourself. That you kind of went through that period,
I had no
right?
idea. I didn't even know what they were talking about. I had no clue. I mean, nobody from the Letterman show had contacted me, so I didn't know that they used that. I didn't even know, why they put me on Letterman. I didn't think anything I did would have been funny enough or significant enough to have, warranted putting me on Letterman.
I want to get our audience in on this right now because this is kind of okay. So we're kind of at that place. We're reminiscing back to the time where you found out you were on Letterman. You didn't really know what it was, and so right now, let's go to the clip and we'll show it to everybody. And thank you very much to Worldwide Pants for giving us permission to do this.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, they updated it.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have a two-part segment featuring our current president, George W. Bush, or second term with George W. Bush. First of two parts. It's called George W. Bush Feels Your Pain. Watch and listen carefully.
My husband and I purchased a brand new 25-inch television from RCA, Thompson Electronics.
When?
And back in 1995.
Did, yeah.
And almost 2 months later, the TV started going on the fritz every now and then. It was intermittent. It didn't happen all the time. If it was in the mood, it didn't work. Every now and then, a black line. Every now and then, a little fuzz. And we called the company and we said, can you tell us what's going on with the television? Well, Mrs. Ditkowsky, there's nothing wrong with the television. You have to call the cable company. Call the cable company.
What is wrong with people? That's what I don't understand. She's talking to the President of the United States.
No. How many people get to do that?
She's not in Circuit City or Radio Shack complaining about her TV. What is wrong with people?
Nobody gets that much time with the president. Anytime.
That's nuts, ain't it? Okay, are you ready? It's now time for George W. Bush Feels Your Pain, Part 2. Part 2.
Progressively, during that 2.5 years, the TV was getting worse. Instead of it having a bad day once every month, now it's once every day. And it got to the point where I said, you know what, this is definitely a television. This is not my cable, it's definitely a television.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
That poor guy.
That's tough to be the president.
I'm telling you, here's what he ought to do. Just stay in the White House. Every couple of weeks, sneak down to Crawford, stay there. Don't go out anymore. He doesn't need to go anywhere.
No,
he's got the next 4 years locked up. Why does he subject himself to that?
Poor man.
That's like a day in my life,
That
for
is,
God's sake. You know what's a very popular show on the Fox is that American Idol. Have you seen that?
Oh, if I've seen it.
And what they do is they get people.
George W. Bush feels your pain, and there's Alita talking to the president about her television set woes and Bush's reaction to it. It was cut perfectly. It was a perfect clip. And now by this point, I'm certain, Alita, you must have known what it was that had gotten on there. They people would have said to you, yeah, it was when you were talking to the president, right? But you still didn't know the frame of reference as to what it was. How did you feel the first time you saw the clip?
I laughed myself. I thought it was hysterical. I thought it was very funny.
It was so perfectly cut, the way that it was, and then Dave going on and on about what does he work at Circuit City?
I honestly didn't think of it like that. I didn't think of it as I'm talking to the president about my television set. I thought about it as I'm talking to the president about a class action lawsuit, a very serious situation where millions of people are getting hurt.
Yeah.
So that was, where I was coming from, and they took it and really ran with it and made, multiple jokes about it, which, turned out to be really, really funny.
Yeah, well, and so to let the audience in on the reaction of this, it was used. George W. Bush feels your pain. So Tommy Ruprecht, and other writers as well. But I want to highlight Tommy specifically because great moments in presidential speeches and the George Bush behaviors and peccadillos, the eccentricities that George W. Bush would display. Went on trips, in speeches, B-roll, were absolutely hilarious, and they were, and Late Show did such a good job. Well, Tommy was kind of the sheriff of that part of the show, and so there were people who were constantly looking for clips of President Bush and some of the things, the antics. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
You all right? Okay.
We can hear you.
My picture keeps going.
Yeah, there you go. You're there.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's kind of adorable. Like this whole thing is kind of adorable. So this happens, you finally realize what it is. Okay, but that was kind of a pinch me moment, but in a sense, it was sort of the cherry on top of a series of pinch me moments that you had been experiencing that brought you to face the leader of the free world and this place that you were like it's really kind of a crazy story. I don't want to go too long with the story, but at the end of the day, you alluded to it. The reason you were sitting with President Bush talking about your television, there was nothing out of normal. That was what you were supposed to be doing at that time in that place, even though it seems so unlikely that somebody would be talking about their television woes to President Bush. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back. I kind of want to talk a little bit more about what it felt like when you saw it there for the first time and all of that stuff, but we'll get back to it. We'll get back to the clip. And by the way, as you know, they've repurposed the clip. So that was George W. Bush Feels Your Pain. That was the first one. But then there's another segment called George W. Bush or Great Moments in Presidential Speeches. And that clip was used again at least once. It might have been more as well. We think there's a couple other times that it was used.
There's a third instance where it was used. We just don't have it.
Okay.
We heard about it from other people.
Yep.
But we've never seen it. We were hoping we could get to see it.
I will do my very best to see if we can maybe locate the third time that it was used and see if we can get it for you. Because again, they've been very receptive to the idea of you guys coming out to the point where I've actually been in contact back and forth with Tommy Ruprecht. One of the things that he said about you, Alita, was, he says, I have nothing really interesting to offer. I just remember flogging through so many Bush speeches. And when you'd find a moment like that, it was such a great feeling. And then I have the sing song of Alita's voice in my head to this day. Yeah. And it is the way that you tell the story. It was just so perfect when you compare it to Bush's reaction. And then he talks about how the idea was, the thing that strikes me now is that it's so amazing. These moments were happening with the most powerful guy in the world, and yet no one would make fun of it till I watched the speech and we put it on TV. Today it would be instantly put on Twitter and jokes would be made, 20 minutes after. He loved how the 11:30 shows back then used to have first crack at anything fun. And really it is sort of a time capsule that it was Letterman's show that would be able to take a moment like that and turn it into comedy gold. It's so funny. Now, here's the thing that I also asked. Whenever a clip was reused, typically it would be because Dave was tickled by it. If Dave was tickled by something, they would then repeat it and they would use it over and over and over again. And this, like you mentioned, this clip was used a few more times, at least one that we have, and then probably more than that. And then
whenever he did the reruns, if he wasn't doing a show that night, they would use the show that had my appearance.
There you go. So
they
it was
kept
even
replaying her appearance over and over and over. And
eventually we did catch it at night when it was a repeat, and I got to see it, myself live.
I go on TV again. Get in here.
And you guys know it because every single time it was replayed, suddenly your phone starts ringing off the hook with people who see it, right?
Right.
it's such a lovely thing. And so for the clip to be used over and over again, it's because Dave liked it, and Tommy did confirm. Yeah, Dave liked that clip. He was tickled with that clip, which is also that puts you in a Hall of Fame of some sort. I don't know which Hall of Fame, but some sort of Hall of Fame. I know you're on Long Island. I know you're a longtime Letterman fan, Alita. You like Dave like early on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so, and as a New Yorker, what a kick! What a kick that must have been. We're still talking and laughing about it when Joel. By the way, shout out to Joel, who connected us. My buddy Joel. Thank you very much for that.
Big shout out to Joel.
Absolutely. When he heard the story for the first time recently, when you told it to him, he fell out of his chair laughing at it. This is the gift that keeps on giving. All these years later, You're still talking about it.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It's 20 years later, and it's like this coming February will be the 20th anniversary.
Well,
and it's not going to die.
Something I just bring up out of nowhere. I reconnected with a friend. Joel's girlfriend happens to be one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And she set up a meeting with me and a mutual friend of ours from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So I hadn't seen her in a long time. So we were just catching up on life and, what we've gone through, what we've done. And this is a big thing that happened.
We played the clips, and Joel was like, "Oh my God, these are great. I got to send these to Mike Chisholm." There you go.
Oh, and this brings me endless delight. There are so many people who had these types of appearances or connections to the show that are still talking about this to this day. This is a beautiful example of it. Now, I do want to get into the story. How was it that you were part of this lawsuit that at the end of the day, you look at what RCA is back then versus what RCA is now when it comes to these things. This class action lawsuit you were a part of was a big deal. And the idea that you had so much face time with President Bush, not just personally, but also with his people, with the preparation for it and all of these things. How in the world did this happen?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't have happened if we didn't buy that TV in the first place. The old 42nd Street photo in Melville on Route 110. We were looking for a TV. She wanted a 25-inch TV. And we saw this 25-inch RCA. Said, Mike, I really want this TV. And as Alita, don't, because if you look at Consumer Reports magazine, and I've subscribed for like 30 years, they had a bad track record. They had bad reliability. And she said, don't go by that. This is a beautiful TV. Look at the picture. Her word was final. We bought the TV. And you ain't seen nothing yet. Then it went.
Well, my feeling was the TV was for the bedroom.
Yep.
No big deal. We didn't need anything with bells and whistles, just as long as it had a nice picture, and that's all I cared about.
Nothing wrong with 25 inches in the bedroom. That sounds great.
There you go.
Time today, you get 40 inches.
Ooh, that hurts.
50 inches. Whatever.
Oh. He's just setting himself up.
Whatever.
Okay. So you get the TV, you bring it home, and when did the trouble begin?
Okay, so not long after, we had Cablevision do the hookup. We got a cable box, and right after, literally, we started having pictures of the TV going in and out. The picture would get fuzzy. The picture would, not turn on all the way. There would be lines. There would be, and when I called RCA, they would turn around and say, "Oh no, that's your cable. You have to call cable."
Yeah.
So, I mean, this became an ongoing thing between me and Cablevision.
Yep.
I was constantly calling them, constantly complaining. And then they would say, "No, it's a TV. Your service is fine." And when I would call RCA, they then would kick it back to Cablevision and say, "No, it's definitely your cable." Now, during all of this, RCA knew damn well that they made millions of TVs defectively. That there was what's called a tuner.
Tuner on board.
Right. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting to that. It was the tuner that it's on a board in the back of the TV, so they called it tuner on board.
Yep.
And it, I guess, for millions of these TVs that were either RCA or under other names.
Yep.
I don't remember the other names that the TVs were.
ProScan.
ProScan was one of them.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
But there were others.
Patrick Stewart did all their commercials after Star Trek Next Generation became big.
But there were other TVs that were made by RCA
Yep.
and had this tuner on board problem that they didn't screw in the back of that tuner in the back of the TV properly.
Okay.
So they had to disassemble the back, put it back on again properly in order for the TV to work. For the TVs that didn't get that done, some had problems so, disastrous that when I called Newsday and spoke to somebody at Newsday about it, one of the editors actually had their RCA blow up.
You're kidding.
Like the TV actually blew up.
So what prompted you to call Newsday? Like, was it just frustration? Is this further along once the lawsuit had been established, or were you kind of like frustrated with the company that you called them?
I was trying. Once I found out there was a foreman from Cablevision.
Yep.
It came to my home and said, "I know what the problem is here. It's definitely your TV.
Yep.
It's definitely RCA. They didn't put the tuner on this TV properly."
Okay.
He knew the whole deal.
Okay.
And he said, "You need to call them. You need to say you want the warranty on this. You want it fixed."
Yeah. And
So,
obviously that didn't work out, and so things get elevated.
Because when I called, they said, "Well, did you go online and did you, look that up?" And I said, "What are you talking about? Go online." I sent in a warranty card, and they made, back then nobody went online to look things up. You're talking 2000.
It was 2000 when it triple started.
2000.
Yeah, it was a very different world back then.
Nobody went online to look things up. So I was like, I had no idea that was even something to do. But I turned around and I said to her, "No, I didn't. But the foreman at Cablevision is very familiar with the situation and very familiar with the problems with the TV, and I want it fixed." So she turned around and said, "Well, there's nothing we could do about it now because now we're under a class action lawsuit."
Oh, so that's when you found out about the lawsuit.
I didn't get anything in the mail yet about it. That was my first notification that this was a class action lawsuit.
Okay, so we're talking millions of TVs, all these devices, all these people, whatever. How in the world do you get pulled into it where you're part of the and how did Washington get involved? Because it seems to me like it's like, okay, we got this class action lawsuit, but this was part of quite a large ordeal from Washington, was it not?
Yeah.
Well, what happened was you go on the Newsday and
you're fast.
Washington was 4 years later.
Right.
Okay.
This ordeal this is an ordeal that went years.
What happened was, first I tried to get a hold of the president of RCA. My whole thing is I always believe that you go to the top.
Okay.
That you don't talk to little people like the woman that I spoke to at RCA that said there's nothing you could do because we're under class action lawsuit. I'm like, well, she's a low man on the totem pole.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to the top.
Okay.
So that's my thing. And I tried to get a hold of the president of RCA. Well, the only way to do that is to call and say that I'm a lawyer and I'm part of the whole class action lawsuit thing. So once he takes my call, I admit to him that I'm not an attorney. Wait,
you got him? You actually got him?
Yes, I did. And I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a consumer who bought your TV and has had nothing but problems. I don't know how you live with yourself. I don't know how you sleep at night, that you have all these people that spent all this money, using your good name, and you're smearing it into mud in the ground. I said, all it would take is for you to fix these TVs. So he said, well, now we have a class action lawsuit and there's nothing I have to do for you. There's nothing I'm going to do for you.
Wow.
So I said, really? I said, let me tell you something. You're messing with the wrong person. I said, I won't sleep until I get even with you. You don't do that to me. I said, I want my TV fixed. I have every right. I spent all this money, sent in a warranty card, and you have the nerve to tell me you're not going to do anything? So he turned around and he said, you know what? You don't like it? Sue me.
Wow.
So he hung up on me, and, at first the steam was just coming out the top of my head.
I can imagine.
I was calling friends and I was saying, I have to do something. I want to wipe RCA off the map.
And never piss off a redhead. Never. Sure.
How dare they? Who do they think they're dealing with? How do they treat people like this? This is disgusting.
Wow.
So I was just beside myself. Now, my history is that I did some journalism in college.
Okay.
And I had a lot of friends who followed up with journalism in terms of their careers.
Yep.
And I called friends, people that I knew, either Washington Post, Miami Herald. When I was working in Miami, I knew some people from the Miami Herald. So I called them. I called New York Times. I called Newsday. I called, trying to remember if there were any other papers, but those were the main ones. Those were the ones that I knew the most. And I spoke to editors of those papers and I said, please, you have to do this story because millions of people have problems with their TV and they probably have no idea what's going on.
And there is a lawsuit in place. So for these news periodicals, there would be something that they could chase. They could go and they could look up the lawsuit and they could put publicity to it. Okay.
Everybody part of this class action lawsuit got a $50 rebate to buy another RCA product.
The lawyer got $22 million.
Right.
Whoa.
The lawyer and the judge that took control over this case. That's why this whole class action lawsuit came to be, is because they wanted to take it out of these private state courts,
right,
where this kind of manipulation could happen, and they wanted to bring it to federal court,
right,
where a judge and an attorney can't just do this class action lawsuit without somebody following it.
So a massive public magnifying glass, and it's at the highest, basically the highest level when you go to federal court.
So
this is how it got to President Bush.
The claimants wouldn't get $50 rebates.
Well, Newsday covered the story first.
Okay.
Of us, our family with the TV. So in 2001, Henry Gilgoff of Newsday covered the story about, the frustration with the lawsuit. So
and put you two front and center. You were the
yes, with our kids.
And it wasn't until 2005 that President Bush, it was 4 years later that it escalated.
So who do you get the call from? Who do you get the call from saying it's gone up?
I just want to add one thing.
Okay.
There's a lot that's really funny from the time that I went to go meet with President Bush.
Yeah.
So we kind of skipped over that too. So after I called the and dealt with the president of RCA, and I called all the newspapers. They did these articles all over, and it came out that RCA was under this class action lawsuit. We then got the $50 rebate in the mail, which I, told Newsday, why would anybody want to buy another RCA product?
Exactly. It's defective. It's not going to work.
Right. When they did this the first time, they would, make another defective product that I would never want.
Yeah.
So no, I don't want to spend another $50 with them. I wouldn't give them a dime. So after that, everywhere I went on Long Island, people recognized me. Oh, you're the lady from RCA. Yeah. You go. Yeah. I'm not buying RCA anymore. Forget it. So anyway, 4 years later, like my husband said, I'm on the phone with a friend of mine, and I get a phone call, and I pick up the phone, and they say, it's the White House. Can we speak to you? And I'm like, the White House? So I get back on the phone to my friend, and I said, listen, I'm going to have to get back to you because somebody says that they're from the White House. And they're calling to talk to me. So she's like, the White House? She said, no, that's a joke. That's a phony phone call.
It's a prank.
So I got back on the phone, and they started saying, were you the same person that was in this article that was in Newsday regarding the RCA TV? And they already had the article. They knew all the information. Yeah. And I'm like, yes, that was me. Can you tell us more about this? And I'm like, okay. So I start discussing the case with them. Yeah. And they said, you know what? You can stop now, that we have enough information. Yeah. So actually, President Bush is looking to do a class action reform. He wants to do a bipartisan bill where Democrats and equally Republicans are interested in making sure that consumers don't get hurt and lawyers and judges don't walk away with $22 million like they did with RCA, where the consumer got rebates like you did. And they said, we're looking to make sure that it goes into a federal court with a federal judge so that all of this is there's records of it. Right. So, and consumers obviously would get better protection. Right. That being said, I thought, well, okay, that's a good idea. I guess I could get behind that. What did you want me to do? So they said, well, we'd like you to appear in the Commerce Building with senators and congressmen and talk to them about passing this bill. Right. So I'm very comfortable going out and speaking to people. I feel okay about that. So I didn't have any problem with it. And they wanted me to fly out to Washington, D.C. to do that. Yep. So I said, well, you know what? I have my kids. I can't leave my kids. My husband works. So if I go, I would have to take my kids. So they said, okay, that's fine. But then, we're going to need you alone because we need to go over all kinds of things with you before you go on stage. Right. So I said, oh, okay, well, then I'll, maybe I'll ask my mother-in-law to come to watch the kids. Mm-hmm. So they said, okay. And they asked me for my social security number and they asked me for my birth date. And they said they would get back to me if they were definitely going to have me come. Mm-hmm. So I called my husband at work and I said, you won't believe this, but the White House called me. They want me to, go down and talk to senators and congressmen about this whole class action lawsuit.
Mike, did you believe it right away?
Like, you gave them your social security number?
There we go.
I'm like, your social security number without confirming for sure who they are. Do you know you may have been scammed? I need you to get off the phone. You better call that number and find out who it is. She called the number and it turned out she got the White House switchboard.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing.
So I guess it wasn't a scam.
It's in
Yeah.
the White House. Can we help you?
Well, and same thing with your mother-in-law too. You told me the other day when we talked about this, your mother-in-law didn't believe it was real right up to the point when you were going to the airport.
Apparently, they were scheduled to leave the next day.
Yep.
So,
Well,
my
no.
mom-
We're skipping ahead.
all right, go ahead.
Let me just finish. So
Gets
Okay.
better
they
a lot.
when they said, that originally that I would be talking to congressmen and senators,
Mhm.
again, I was okay with that. They called me that night, the same day,
Yep.
said, yes, we decided we want you to come and speak. So we're going to need you to come out in 2 days. They gave me
Wow.
2 days. But you're not going to talk to senators and congressmen. They're going to be in the audience. I said,
Uh-huh.
oh, so then who am I talking to? So he said, the president of the United States. So I'm like, that I can talk to president?
You got to talk to W.
I'm not comfortable with that. And they were like, why? Can you tell us why? And I was like, well, because I'm a Democrat and I didn't vote for President Bush. And they were like, exactly. We know that. That's why we want you to come down, because it's a bipartisan bill. And we want to show that there's Democratic support for this. So I was like, wow, okay. And apparently a lot of people said the president calls you to come down, you do it.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
So
Our Congressman Steve Israel said the same thing. The president calls you. I don't care what party you're in. You go down.
Oh,
But
there
it
you
was
go.
bipartisan support, because it turned out Senator Schumer and Senator Dodd were sponsoring that bill also. They were supporting it.
Wow.
So it was true.
Wow. These are the heaviest hitters in the American government. And suddenly you're at the epicenter of this thing.
I'm in the middle of it all. Attorney generals, and
Oh, yeah.
all of a sudden I'm Little Miss Washington. I mean, it was crazy. It was really surreal. Anyway, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll be talking to a president. Okay. And the next day I pull my kids out of school.
Yep.
And I say, we have to leave, in the morning, we have a flight. So we need to get ready. And the car comes to pick us up. And I told my husband to call his mother to let her know that the car that they sent for me to take me to the airport and the kids is coming to get her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they went in the car. So I told my wife I would call her. And I called my mom, said, I just wanted to let you know, a huge black SUV with a guy in a black sport coat, looked like he was security or something. They just picked up Alita and the kids. They're on the way to your house. And she goes, oh, crap. I didn't finish packing. I didn't know this was real. And she grabbed everything as quick as she could, because she literally had less than 5 minutes before they got to her.
She thought it was a yarn. She thought it was
Right.
yep.
She really didn't think it was real.
But it got better for them at the airport, she'll tell you.
So when we get to the airport, we unload all our luggage, and we go to the desk, where the tickets are. And I at this point I don't have the tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Because they said that it would be waiting for me at the agent, with the tickets. So I go to the desk and I said, I was told that my tickets would be here. And she said, well, we don't have any tickets for you. She said, can I have your license? So I give her my license. My mother-in-law gives the license, and my mother-in-law is turning around and she's saying, okay,
Told you so. Told you so.
where is candid camera? I want to know where the cameras are, because that's the only explanation for all of this.
Yeah.
So this must be candid cam.
She was convinced it was a trick, that they were really hidden cameras playing a joke on them.
Right.
Alan Funt would come from behind the pillar over there and say, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Whatever. She was convinced it was hidden, that they were hidden cameras. So the woman says, can you wait, 2 minutes? So while my mother-in-law is busy looking for hidden cameras, she's on the phone. Exactly what agency she called or who she called, I don't know. But literally 2 minutes later, bing, bing, boom, she pops up in the computer. There you are. Here are your tickets. And, all of a sudden, all of our tickets appear.
Like magic.
So she's like, your flight leaves, whatever, in 45 minutes. This is where the gate is. You need to go. And, so we went. My mother-in-law kept saying, oh my God, we're really going to Washington. And she kept saying, how could this be real? How could this be real?
Yeah, this is one of those stories. This is not just one of those stories that it's one of those stories that just keeps getting better. Like, we know it ends with a gag on Letterman, but you got to get there to meet the president first. And so your family wasn't there. It was just you that was there meeting the president, or did your family get a chance to see it as well?
Well, no, my mother-in-law and my kids were actually in the audience.
Oh, that's great.
When the whole thing happened. But what happened before that was that I had to spend time with the president by myself, and also the committee that put this whole thing together, the PR people that put it together, they were busy, I guess, prepping me for what it was that they wanted me to talk about, what they wanted me to say, what they wanted me to stress. To try to get this bill passed.
The dress rehearsal.
My job was to convince the Senate and Congress that this is a good bill, that this way people wouldn't get hurt, and they should pass it.
And meanwhile, while she was in the meeting with the president, they took my mom and the kids on, the staff took my mom and the kids on a tour of Washington, the red carpet, golden treatment, all over the place.
Yeah, they really made
really
out.
Cool.
Yeah, they made out.
That's fantastic.
So I got prepped, and then came, right before, there was an hour of me and President Bush sitting in a room talking about what we were going to say on stage.
Wow.
Along with who else was with us in that room? There was a professor, I think, from Duke University.
Yeah.
And also
a couple of lawyers up there with her to discuss the whole bill.
Right.
It was like a 40-something minute conference.
But mostly the president was just really talking to me, because I was the one that was really the focal point of the whole meeting. So, of course, he's sitting next to me, and I'm literally shaking. I'm shaking. I'm so nervous. I'm shaking. So he said, am I going to have to pick you up off the floor? And I turned around and I said, always a possibility. It could very well happen. We need to be prepared.
I feel like he would have liked that response.
He did, actually. He said, well, I got you. And he put his hand up my back. And he said, I'm going to make sure nothing happens to you. You're good. And, I'm a regular guy. You see, I'm a regular guy. He said, I put my, pants on one leg at a time like everybody else. I'm a regular guy. And you know what? Honestly, he really was. He really was so nice. He really was.
Kindness goes a long way, doesn't it?
What?
Kindness goes a long way. Even with people we disagree with, kindness really does go a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he was. He was. He was really nice. Anyway, we talked about all this, and then, the time on the stage came, and, then all the newspapers covered that. I mean, that was TV covered it, newspapers covered it. the New York Times that originally wouldn't cover my story about the TV, all of a sudden wanted quotes from me. And I'm like, I got you.
And the Washington Post even gave almost a full page with a photo of her and the president. Henry Gilgoff of Newsday was contacted again by her, and he did another story with that same photo that the Washington Post had, taking her complaint to the top.
Yeah.
Right.
Literally.
Right, because as I told you, that's my motto, is to always go to the top. Now, obviously, I wasn't planning on talking to a president.
Yeah. You really took that to the next level there, Alita.
There is no top above that. So.
Well, I would argue, except for the big man behind the chair, David Letterman. We're getting to him.
But even afterwards, even the kids and my mom actually got private time with him. They had a few things there.
Well, after the conference, they had a photographer take pictures of all of us together with the president.
That's excellent.
So
but can I go back to the conference? Can I go back to the conference for just 1 second, though? Because, okay, so you're on stage with President Bush. You're telling him exactly what you've told all of us here.
Right.
Now, at that point, does he address everybody? Is he, he asks you some questions, I assume? Well, you're a consumer.
Right, regarding the TV.
And the whole conference is available, by the way. We'll post links to it and things like that. For people to see if they want to go down that path and see it. But basically at this point here, how does he finish off? So he hears your story. What's the response there during that conference at that point?
Well, he's very receptive, and he finds out. He knows already, but he's saying, and he tells the audience that this turned out to be the largest class action settlement in history.
Wow.
In history, where, the lawyer and the judge wound up splitting whatever it was, 22 million, 25 million, whatever it was.
Yep.
And claimants literally got $50 rebates.
Okay.
To buy another RCA, not money back, for their broken TV that they spent, $900, $1,000. No, we got no money back. We got nobody fixing our TVs. We got, nothing other than a rebate.
The bigger issue being saying to the audience, our system is broken. This bill is going to help fix this, so this won't happen anymore where people can take advantage of the law in this particular way. Okay.
Right.
And that was successful. That happened.
Yes. Then after they voted, it was passed.
That was right then and there, or was that at a different time?
The bill signing was a week later.
A week later. Okay.
It was like a month. It was like a month later.
Okay, but pretty quick. Like all things considered. That's it's hard to herd cats.
On it. Senate voted, Congress voted, and they passed it.
And you got pictures. We got pictures of that too that we're gonna show. Like literally, you saw the signing of the.
They called to tell me first of all that it passed. So I was really excited that I helped facilitate that. So that was pretty exciting. But then I got called by the president to come down for the signing. And I'm like, oh, wow. Well, okay, my kids are in school and
the flight was leaving in 2 hours.
Well, that
2 or 3 hours. The same day.
What a nice little cherry on top, though, that they would.
That he's going to sign it, that I need to come down to DC. They'll get me on a flight.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, in order for me to do that, I got to pull my kids out of school. So I called the secretary at the front desk of the school, and I'm like, this is Mrs. Ditkowsky, but I got to pull my kids out of school again because they're going to meet the president.
And then she heard laughing behind her, behind the woman. The principal was standing right behind the receptionist laughing because he had known they had just gone. And he was like, again.
So I went to the school, quickly picked up the kids, packed up their bags, and said, okay, we need to go. I wasn't able to get my mother-in-law at the time.
Yep.
They hired somebody from the White House, I guess, to take care of my kids while I was on stage.
Wow.
But I mean, it was just anyone who was part of government was on that stage with me.
Who says they can't get government can't get things done? Like they had you there. Wow.
Senator Dodd, you had the Attorney General, you had, I mean, who's who of politics.
You had McConnell right in front of you.
Right.
Wow.
I mean, it was the whole thing. Everybody was.
Where was the bill signed? It wasn't the Oval Office. It was where
The East Wing.
The East Wing. East Wing. Okay.
Of the White House. Yeah.
That is.
And it was funny because right after the signing, I couldn't go. I was in between patients, and I get a call at my office, and my wife's friend Penny calls and says, "Mike, I got to tell you, that was some kiss the president planted on your wife." And I go, "What?" "Yeah, on TV." "You know what? I'll call you right back." So I called Alita, and I get her on her cell phone, and she goes, Mike, I can't talk. I'm in the East Wing of the White House." "Wait, you're there now? Then I have a question for you. How was the kiss?" and then she goes, "What kiss? What are you talking about?"
Class Action Fairness Act there, limiting class action lawsuits. In essence, it moves them, the smaller ones, or the larger ones, I should say, above $5 million, to federal court, where federal courts have been less likely to take on cases like this. It also stops lawyers from shopping these type of cases from state to state to get the best juries available.
And then all of a sudden, you could hear her jaw drop.
Well,
there was
because
like a minute of
How
silence.
did you know? How did you know?
I was shocked. I was embarrassed. I was like,
No, she didn't. She didn't
know,
remember. She was "What kiss?" And then she just went silent. And then she was like, "Oh my God, the kiss. What? How did you know that?" "Oh, Penny called. At the office, about 50 million people saw the president kiss you on national TV."
Well, because they televised the signing of the bill.
Yep.
So I mean, at this point,
Talk about great moments in presidential speeches right there. There it is.
Yeah.
it really was something. It was really something. But I mean, the whole thing is like a dream. And then, you know, that was over.
Yeah.
I came home, and of course we had pictures. I had the bill and the pen that he sent me.
Oh, that is cool. That is
Yeah.
very, very. Do you still have that?
Yes, I do.
Outstanding. Oh, that's
Yeah.
excellent to
Yeah.
hear.
We
No,
got
I-
everything.
I have all that and the pictures, you know, that his office sent. So I have all these memories, but then a couple of months later, I'm getting calls. I'm on David Letterman.
That was my next question. What was the lag time behind all of this? So it feels like there was at least a couple months between when you actually were on stage with the president, because that happened before the bill signing,
Right.
and before they were able
Right. It
scour and
definitely
find.
happened after the bill signing.
Okay,
think-
so it was
I've
within
been
you think
about, I
weeks to
think it
months
was-
kind of thing?
But
Right. So it might have been a month later.
About a month later. Okay.
Right. So it took them time. It took them time, I guess, to get the clip and come up with all the jokes that they did.
But you talk about, again, I used the phrase earlier, cherry on top. Like, you think about this amazing experience that you've just, you know, nobody thinks that they're ever going to end up at the White House seeing an event like this, or
course
part
not.
of something, talking to the president, being smooched by the president.
My goal was literally to get back at RCA. That was, you know, that was the whole goal.
Right.
My goal was to talk to the president of RCA,
Yep.
which I did, and I got no satisfaction. And then my goal after that was to get even with them and say, you can't treat consumers like this.
Right. Yes.
You have no right. So, and after the article came out in Newsday, my husband and I actually sent the president of RCA a copy of the article
Fantastic.
and said, "This is what happens when you try to screw your consumer." So
was that person still working for RCA at the time? Like, it seems like this is one of those things where could remove somebody. Oh gosh, that is so crazy.
He was still the president of RCA. I mean, you don't hear or see anything about RCA anymore.
Not as much as you used to. They don't
Oh no, absolutely.
I mean, I could tell you, after this whole thing happened, I saw a lot less sales of RCA TV.
Well, and then there's that intangible question. Imagine if that guy's a Letterman fan, and one night, he's home, late from the, it pops on the TV. Oh no, it sees this bit, because it's not like you used RCA in the bit that they used. I believe you used that, or I don't know. Maybe they didn't have the word RCA in there.
I don't think they say exactly RCA there.
Yeah,
but in that whole conference, if they looked up the conference with me and the president, it definitely discussed. But
every newspaper that covered the incident specifically mentioned RCA.
Because that was
everything.
The class action lawsuit.
So you get back to normal life, and it's like, okay, well, back to the normal. That was fun. That was one of those moments in life we're always going to remember.
Right. So
and
this
then,
class action lawsuit got, big publicity all over the place.
And
so
then suddenly,
the good PR that RCA would have wanted.
No, of course. And then a month later, you find out that you're on Letterman, and I mean, what a wonderful PS to that story is that it would get caught like this, and there'd be some humor. Like, I mean, I remember that moment. I'm pretty sure I watched every Late Show. I was pretty diligent with it, and I had them recorded, and I would catch up and all that sort of stuff. The moment that Joel showed me the clip, I'm like, oh, I remember this. I totally remember it. It was, and it's really cool. Like you obviously don't want to take a magic trick, and you don't want to deconstruct it and show people necessarily how it works. Same thing with a joke sometimes. This one here, when I found your story and I started talking to you, you're both characters, and it's just the story is so precious. And then we get to this, the joke, which was so good. And I love the behind the scenes of this one here. I feel like this has been one of my favorite episodes. I just love this so much, and the Letterman part of it for you two. It seems to be one of the most delightful parts too, because that's the random part where people are coming up to you and suddenly talking to you about it, and
from all over.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm like, a star. I was on Letterman. I was like one of those comedians on Letterman. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's great. And by the way, the original, I'll post the original, Mike, to you, the YouTube channel I assume you built this YouTube channel because Worldwide Pants sent you the tape.
Yeah.
They sent you the clip, which I thought was really classy to hear.
Stuff on there too, but
sure. To share it with friends and family so that they could see it.
So I put all the clips there. I put the kiss there. I actually put the whole class action conference there.
Yep.
And the kids' bat mitzvah stuff and assorted
things.
The
kiss was actually a funny story also, because he was actually shaking everyone's hand. So I put my hand out for him to shake it. And that wasn't what he planned to do. So he grabbed my hand and then moved onto my cheek and kissed my cheek.
That is very sweet. This whole thing is very sweet. And as we kind of bring this part of the conversation to the close, is there anything that we missed? Is there anything about this, in the years following or the months following, whenever Dave would use it? Obviously, when the rerun would go on, or if they repurposed that moment and used it again, you'd have a fresh volley of people.
I think when they used it in that second episode, it wasn't that much later. It was like, oh, good God, that there was that other clip.
I mean, to me, I didn't think that I was doing something humorous with the president. I was there to do business.
Yes, of course.
My goal was to get even with RCA and make sure that they didn't hurt any other consumers and that, they got theirs, right?
Yes,
That was my goal. And when Letterman his writers made that joke, she's talking to the president of the United States.
She's not in the middle of Circuit City or Radio Shack. What is wrong with people?
Like, it started me thinking, oh my God, I'm a crazy TV lady.
Here's what you want to do. Not go out anymore. Step down at Crawford's. He's got the next 4 years all locked up. Why did you subject himself to that? Those are the best lines.
20 years later, you're quoting it verbatim, and
Right.
that shows right there the joy that it brought to you. And I mean, that's what
Dad and I quote my mom a lot because my kids and my mom got some time with him, and the things my mom said, I nearly died. I mean, what did she say? Maybe too bit much. She had her time. She had her fun.
I mean, my kids had a lot of fun with President Bush. I mean, while we were taking pictures, he spent a lot of time with us, so it was nice.
Yep.
I have really enjoyed getting to know you and going through this story with you. This is. I'll tell you this, doing this show, I love talking to the people who worked for the show and the people who wrote about the show and all of that sort of stuff. I love doing this, but when the show was originally conceived, the idea would be that we would talk to people who were civilians, essentially, who were featured on the show and still
in the line of fire.
Yeah, because I had run into through time to time, like I'm a huge Letterman enthusiast, always have been. And so I would meet people. I met somebody on a cruise ship once who had an encounter with the show. And I mean, it was years later because their encounter was with the late night version of the show. And they were telling me about it, and it was probably 15 years later. And I have, through my life, met people, this is long before we even thought about doing the podcast, met people who would have this encounter with the show randomly, like a civilian, like we said. And they were still talking about it. And we have had a couple examples since we started the Letterman podcast, but this one here is, as far as I'm concerned, in the way that I see things, a grand slam home run, because here we are literally almost 20 years to the day, and we are laughing about it like it happened yesterday. And it was such a positive thing. And I'm just so pleased as punch to have met you. I owe Joel a tasty beverage for introducing us. I'm so grateful for this. Before we kind of wrap things up here, was there anything else that you wanted to throw out there to Tommy, to Dave himself, to?
Well, no, I was just going to say that this story was not anything that anybody could even make up.
Yeah.
Like,
you're right. Yep.
I mean, everything from start to finish, you would never know that one thing is going to happen next of all of it. The way the whole thing played out, just circumstance.
Kind of like snowball on the hill, and it rolls down and starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
I mean, obviously, the biggest part was, appearing on Letterman.
that is the.
This was gonna.
That is the perfect
kind of attention.
That is the perfect way to end this here. I have a saying that I compulsively say. I don't know if it's a nervous thing or whatever, but at the end of an episode that I enjoy, and let's face it, I enjoy them all. I say, this is why we do the show. If I wrote that down, I would underline it twice. This is why we do the show is I love community. I love us being able to talk about this and laugh about this. Thank you very much, both of you, Alita and Mike.
Thank you for having us.
It's our pleasure. Thank you. It was great seeing you.
It was great reminiscing.
Absolutely. We'll say our goodbye privately. I'll do the outro here real quick.
Come on out to New York. Come on out with Joel. Go for a beer.
Next time I'm out, absolutely. You're on the list. I've got every time I go to New York now, the list seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger since we started the show. So absolutely. Thank you guys so much for everything. I appreciate it. This has been another episode of the Letterman Podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. Thank you and good night.
Changed less experience.
Yeah, that's right. and Jerry Lee Lewis. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for something we call, gosh, this has been fun. I'm so happy we were able to do this. The segment is called Great Moments in Presidential Speeches.
Oh.
Take a look.
My fellow Americans, our long national nightmare is over.
Communism is another sad, bizarre chapter in human history whose last pages even now are being written.
Almost 2 months later, the TV started going on the fritz every now and then. It was intermittent. It didn't happen all the time. If it was in the mood, it didn't work. Every now and then, a black line. Every now and then, a little fuzz. And we called the company and we said, can you tell us what's going on with television? Well, Mrs. Ditkowsky, there's nothing wrong with your television. You have to call the cable company. Call the cable company.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Whew.
That's about the cable company, Mrs. Ditkowsky. And now it's time to play Will It Float?
Overcoat and underpants.